One of the conversations we've been having on this channel over the last couple weeks is one of worth. What is a card worth, and what does that even really mean exactly? It's a hot topic over the last few months, right? There's always the discussion about the cost of playing Flesh and Blood, even as prices across the board are dropping. So today I'm joined by none other than the always energetic Riddlerman to discuss this and how the value of entertainment and experience applies to the cost of worth in Flesh and Blood. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dice Commando and a very special Go Again, a fabulous cast. So today we're talking worth and value in Flesh and Blood, and more importantly, its perception by the community at large. Joining me today for the discussion is Josh from RiddlermanGaming, who in a recent interview with Sloop really impressed me with some of the points he brought up. So I wanted to talk with him about it. So how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you very much for inviting me to come chat with you. Somebody that I've been looking up into in the community for a long time, watching all your videos, and really well put together, edited, and succinct in the point, so you can get in and get out. So I appreciate it, and I'm glad that you invited me on to chat about everything. So
awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear you. Glad to hear you think it's succinct. That's actually generally the feedback I get. Is that it's, but. No,
well, maybe I come from a world where I don't expect everything within 3 minutes, so so a little bit longer for me is okay.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. So first off, the majority of the people watching this are going to know who you are, but real quick, if you could just give us a summary, who are you? What's your channel? What's your shtick? What's the deal?
Yeah, so my name is Josh. So RiddlermanGaming is the channel, and we started out as kind of a market watch finance type channel, and part of that is because my background was in finance, investment broker, and things like that. So I kind of brought some of that mentality into the game, and then over time, just playing the game, being a part of the community, meeting people, I slowly shifted gears to being more just about how can we interact with the community, how can we build sort of a digital LGS style community around Flesh and Blood, and just appreciate the game and all of its aspects, and talk about everything, the good, the bad, the news, the deck text, the cards, just enjoyed all the art. Really had a great time. So, and it's, people like yourself, just meeting you and just having conversations, genuine, passionate conversations with so many people about the game of Flesh and Blood has impressed me. And it's just made it to where I kind of want to do it every day, come in and see what everybody's up to and make it work.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with his channel, he puts stuff out every day. Right, or damn near every day.
Yeah, at least once, maybe 2, 3. Who knows?
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, the main reason I wanted to talk to you was kind of like I mentioned, reminiscent of the conversation you had over on Sloop's channel. A great podcast. Please go check that out on his Chadcast. But you all were talking about inevitably a lot of these conversations end up boiling down to Flesh and Blood is too expensive or not, depending on which side of the coin you fit on. So something I've been talking about on my channel for the last 2 weeks or so is kind of the difference between cost, value, and worth. And I kind of wanted to get your take on that as someone who you've mentioned has done some investing, whether you want to call it that or not, in Flesh and Blood and cold foils and stuff like that. So let's just go ahead and pull off the Band-Aid. Where do you stand on the quote-unquote Flesh and Blood is too expensive argument?
Everything is always relative to kind of where you're at in your life, I guess. When I first joined the game, there was almost like a hell no would I ever pay over $100 for a trading card. There's no possibility that I would ever feasibly do that. I couldn't understand it. I was like, why would you spend this money on this card? And then as I got into the game, I played for over 12 months with almost no legendary equipment, because I played Kassai, even in Blitz, and it was all Brave Forge Bracers and Valiant Dynamos and, Courage of Bladehold, thank God, was there, but I didn't have anything. Arcanite Skull Caps, I didn't have any of that, let alone a Fine Elf's Tunic. And so I was just enjoying the game. Yeah, I got beat up at armories, but I got into the game by just buying bulk cards off of Facebook and just learning about it that way and buying a couple packs here or there. And I'm fortunate enough that I could afford the tunic, but I couldn't mentally make that transition to say, am I so serious about this hobby that I want to invest in that much of a card or a series of cards to get there, because at the time, CNC was still $100 and something dollars. E-strikes are up there at like, $50, $60, wherever they were. And you look at that, and it is intimidating if you don't understand who you are as a person and what your goals are with the game. And it was like just a really fun way to get out there and learn about the game and play with people. And then as I became more and more passionate about it, that's when I kind of flipped the switch to, okay, I want to collect all the cold foils. I want to collect all the legendaries. I want to collect, all the sealed product. And I kind of like ramped up. But it took me a long time to get to that, at least 12 months to get to that point where I was like, okay, I really like this game. I want it to be a part of my life and part of my hobby. And I started to go into the higher tiers of things. So is it too expensive? I mean, it is if you are going to enter the game and want to have top deck everything, then yeah, it's expensive. But also, what hobby would you ever get into at a competitive level with zero experience, zero time, zero knowledge, and zero skill set, and expect to purchase the top tier stuff, right? I don't have any like great examples off the top of my head, but I don't know. Maybe you're into riding motorcycles. You're not going to go buy a $25,000 Ducati for your first bike, right? You're going to go buy like a Kawasaki Ninja 500cc, and you're going to learn how to ride, and you're going to get good with that, and then you're going to upgrade to the next bike, and then to the next bike, and then maybe you start competing in races or something. You don't just go from zero to, champion. And I think if people really thought about that, when you're getting into a new game or a new hobby, you shouldn't expect yourself to have to buy the top tier stuff. The question might then become, though, and I don't know how you feel about this, like maybe the problem is actually that the armories are too competitive. So the what's supposed to be the casual local scene feels daunting for a new player, because if they don't have the top tier stuff, they can't compete with another player. I don't know. Is that something that maybe you think that might resonate with some people as why tunics and, Crowns of Providence are brought up in that conversation early?
Yeah, I think it is. I definitely think it is. And I'm not necessarily saying that LSS needs to go out and create another tier of local tournament, but LGSs could, right? Or you could play with your buddies at a bar, or, whatever floats your boat. But I do think there's, maybe not everywhere, but I think there's certainly some truth to your statement there, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the, and I understand being competitive at the LGS, because that's where you're gaining your experience points, to get qualified for certain events. And that might be a fallacy right there, right? The fact that the local casual lowest tier, competitive level is that competitive might be a breaking point for some. But what I would say is we have a responsibility. Those of us who own these nice and expensive cards and have all these nice decks, maybe we have a responsibility of doing like one of two things. Either loan those good cards to the new people so they can get exposure to how the deck would play with those cards versus without them, so they can make an educated decision if they even need them. And two, maybe also like maybe hold some punches, at the army. Like if you're playing a new person, right? Like maybe you don't need to like utilize all the equipment to its fullest or something. Maybe you don't have to just smash them into the ground. And they don't even do a point of health to you, and you beat them, and then you're like, hey, let me tell you what you did wrong, like maybe that's like one of those two things might make that experience a little bit better for somebody onboarding to a new experience.
Yeah, I think that's a tough ask in, the Flesh and Blood community has its competitive spikers, right?
Yeah.
And, So I think that's a tough argument overall. But you actually lead into an interesting there, right? Because you use the word equipment many times in what you were just saying. Right. Yeah. So I suspect that in the Flesh and Blood is too expensive argument, right, for folks approaching the game, I think one of the coolest things about this game is the start full mechanic, right? You start with your hero and a weapon and a board full of really awesome, hopefully shiny stuff. Yeah. And I do suspect, or I do wonder if the fact that, like if you compare Flesh and Blood to like a Magic the Gathering or something like that, right? We as players of this game understand that an $80 tunic is basically the equivalent of a playset of other cards that would go into a Magic deck, right? And in many cases, it's actually less. But it's got that $80 price tag, right? So I wonder if it's just the fact that like you look at the equipment and you're like, well, I don't want to sit down starting at a quote unquote disadvantage, right? What do you think that's probably a large portion of this argument versus the other games?
Yes, yes, I do, but I'm also concerned that again, that mentality is that these people are going to think that they just can buy equipment and shortcut, the skill progression and the experience playing all the different heroes and the experience just playing the game and following the rules and understanding when to use the equipment is appropriate and not to use the equipment and pitch stack. There's so many like nuances that really honestly a new person should be focused on, to me, way before they worry about getting the top tier equipment. And Commoner is a cool format. I personally don't like Commoner, but it is a cool format because it can satisfy like many of those things. You can learn how your deck performs without really good cards or equipment, meaning that once you've kind of mastered it at the lowest level, you might actually understand more fully why you would incorporate certain types of cards into your deck and certain pieces of equipment, because they might give you that advantage in this situation more often than not, right? And do you play any MMORPGs like World of Warcraft or anything, right?
I do. I don't know, but many of our viewers will. Yeah. So.
Well, let me help. Yeah. Here's the example, right? So you can purchase, like a instant leveling up, token or something, right? So you go from level 0 to 90, let's say, in World of Warcraft. That's fantastic. You're now the highest level, and you theoretically have some baseline equipment, but you have zero idea how to actually play your class. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what your skills do, your abilities do. You don't know when you should use them. You don't know how they work together. And I see that as a very like similar correlation to TCGs, is that just because you own the cards doesn't mean you know how to use the cards or play the hero. And I think the emphasis when people are starting out shouldn't be on price tags. It should really be on what experiences do I need to get, what skills do I need to learn, what are the other heroes in the game, and what are they going to be trying to do to me so I can counter that. And none of that has anything to do with equipment, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, but now you're talking life philosophy of getting a new job and hoping you don't, or asking why you didn't get promoted on the first review cycle. But that's
yeah. I mean, we're not here trying to like fundamentally change how people are human beings, right? But these are true issues that do arise in kind of a culture that has become. I don't know the right way to say it, but the expectation is that you're going to have the success of a champion without putting forth the effort of the champion. That they've, like everybody wants to be Michael Jordan, but nobody wants to practice basketball for 23 hours a day, right? Like, or Michael Phelps in swimming, but nobody wants to be at the pool at 3 a.m. swimming for 3 hours before they go to school. And you can't get to those levels without putting forth that effort. And it has nothing to do with price tag. It's all. It's the amount of time and attention and practice and discovering what you did wrong and reviewing what you did wrong and trying to improve. Like that is more important than a price tag any day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that Flesh and Blood is definitely and I mean, I think you bring up a good point, right? That taking your lumps along the way without the sexy equipment teaches you to be better, and then when you get the tech, you'll automatically take that jump. I think it's a fair argument.
Yeah.
Right. So in your interview with Sloop, which I've referenced, I think twice now, you brought up a really excellent point in there when you were talking about, I believe it was flame scale furnace, and you were talking about how like I think the rainbow foil cost, I'm sure it's wrong as of today, but it was like 110 or something like that, and you were saying that the cold foil was like 130 or something like that. And the argument you were making was that from a long-term perspective, the extra 20, if you're going to buy a $110 card, buy the 130 card because it will hold the value for longer in theory. So can you elaborate on that type of concept and how you're approaching that really kind of in your long-term, now that you're considering yourself to be a long-term collector?
Yeah, so that goes a lot deeper than just the price tag, right? One thing is understanding just basically right when a set is created, LSS does a great thing called the Collector Center where they put out information about the pull rate possibilities of these cards. And since Flesh and Blood 2.0 has come out, there's been a huge emphasis on making legendaries and pretty much all cards accessible to the player level, meaning a lower price point on the Rainbow Foil legendaries, which I think they massively succeeded in that. Most of them are under $50, and that's what's to be expected. Sometimes you get things like Flame Scale Furnace where The disparity between price between the rainbow foil and the cold foil should be, theoretically, if everything was perfect in a perfect market, around 2.5 to 3 times more expensive, because it's that much more difficult to pull the cold foil versus the rainbow foil. So in a world where, you know, every rainbow foil is going to be around $50, paying $100 for the cold foil mathematically seems like a pretty good deal. Sometimes, though, what you see, though, is with Flamescale Furnace is, I sold a rainbow foil for about $110 right before that whole conversation with Sloop Dupe, and then I bought the cold foil for $130 because why not? Put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. And the reason you would do that is because obviously the rainbow foil is overpriced, right? If all the rainbow foils are around that $50 mark for legendaries, that's pretty standard. And you know that there's a spike up in the price because everybody's trying to play Dromai, and there's a lot of popularity around Dromai, and she's performing well at these events. But the cold foil has not moved, right? The price on the cold foil has not fluctuated with the increase of the price in rainbow foil. It just shows that there's a value proposition there that says, hey, I can get this card for about the same price, and it should be worth either more, or the rainbow foil should be worth significantly less, right? So that's kind of like the first aspect of this. The second part is kind of long-term collectability, which is very, very clearly documented in all of LSS's, articles and philosophies and policies. They do care about collectors in this game. It is built into the structure of what the game was built around, collecting and playing great games. And keeping cards of value. James White actually writes that in articles, that he wants players to feel proud to have things of beauty that retain their value. That is the cold foil. And we know also that the cold foils won't be reprinted. So therefore, the idea that possibly a Flamescale Furnace might get reprinted in non-foil version, that's a very high probability in the future, if it's still relevant and people still want it. And it's, $100 for sure, I think. If it's over $100, they'll for sure reprint it in the future. If it's not, maybe not. But they won't ever reprint is the cold foil first copy that came out in Uprising. So the ability to get that right now for what I believe, again, do whatever you want, but what I believe is a pretty fair price in relation to how hard it is to pull, I was happy to get it. And that my idea is that if I'm going to purchase something, why not purchase something that significantly has a higher chance of retaining some of its value? I don't ever expect it to you sell something, I think you should immediately knock off 50%, because that's what you're going to lose between fees, shipping, and there's thing called income tax that most of us should be paying whenever we, get income from selling stuff. Unless you're running a business and offsetting the costs with your receipts and stuff. But most people aren't. So if you take all that, you're cutting your price by 50%. So even if I sold it for $130 next week, I'm still not getting $130, right? At the end of the day. So, but it will retain more value, I believe, than the rainbow foil for sure. Because one, there's going to be more rainbow foils in the world, 100% guaranteed that there's going to be more rainbow foil copies in the world, because it just is pulled more often, and there's more printed. And two, it is susceptible to reprinting down the line, to where there's going to be cheaper copies. Because if, I don't like to use the word the player copy, because I just think that's demeaning. But if the lower priced copy, is the one that's sought after, well, guess what happens when there's a new one that's even lower priced? You can see it with Feindel's Tunic right now. Look at the Crucible of War Unlimited Tunic. It has come all the way down to the same price as the Bright Lights Tunic, and there's a reason for that, because it's just the cheapest copy. It's the plainest copy in black border, and people aren't going to be willing to pay $100 extra just to have a different 3 letters at the bottom of the card. They will pay extra for a cold foil, something special, right? They'll pay extra for a rainbow foil because that's something special. But why would you pay extra for a non-foil? You just buy the cheapest copy, the play copy, right? And it makes sense. That makes total sense to me. And I think, kudos to Flesh and Blood and LSS, because it makes the game accessible and it makes the game collectible. And I love it. I think it's a great move forward.
Yeah, and to be clear, closing that, that's something I've always paid attention to as well. Is it is about 2.5x, right, in terms of the number of copies floating around. But the fact
for legendary, yeah,
right, yeah, and the fact that has been closed, or the fact that gap has been closed since probably Dynasty-ish, right? I mean, and we were just talking about Uprising, so it's closed there as well, right? I mean, some of the new legendaries are like $25, and their cold foils like $35, something like that,
Yeah,
right? So,
100%. That's a buy to me, right? Like, I'm gonna absolutely buy the cold foil copy over the, because I think the cold foil copy in that situation is drastically underpriced. But it's only because the hero's not popular or the card's not popular, right?
mhm,
Which comes into the pricing. But
yeah,
again, we can probably this is literally what my channel talks about for
yeah,
for
fair,
hours.
fair
So
enough,
I don't
fair enough.
want to take up too much of your time with that. But I mean, you can dig really deep into this and try to understand. And this is no way a perfect philosophy, right? Especially in a down market, down economy. I think we're just now finally acknowledging a recession in this world after 3 years of a recession. So who knows where things are going to go? But it is fun and it's exciting, and I love talking about it and trying to study it. So.
All right. Well, the next question I had for you is kind of explaining the title of "Rent to Own," right? And or the title of this cast on the thumbnail. And I'm going to actually spin it a little bit from the one I sent you before. But so if you're planning on holding a card, right, your tunic, right? Let's say you spend $70 for a tunic, and you're going to hold it forever. Isn't that tunic actually worth $0 when you resell it, right? Because in theory, I mean, again, and maybe you're selling it on your deathbed or something, and Flesh and Blood's going strong. But if you decide, like for me, there are many cards that I own in Flesh and Blood that I probably won't sell until it's way too late and the game's dead,
For
or
sure. Yep.
I just don't sell them because my wife's selling them as part of my estate. You know what I mean? So those cards are effectively worth $0 to you. Well, they're personally worth to me a lot, but financially they're worth $0, right? Because it's not an asset that I'm going to move. So how do you go about budgeting that into your, as a collector, you want to hold every cold foil. So
Yep.
are your cold foils actually worth what they're worth on the day when you look them up on TCG Player?
No, I don't think they are, not even close. But I it's hard to say because I personally I don't want to collect them in the idea that they're worthless, right?
Mm-hmm.
To anybody else. So yes, the game thriving and growing is a huge factor that is important to me. But in terms of value, while I'm holding it, it's just like real estate, right? Your house isn't really worth what it says on Zillow until you sell it, right? It's the same philosophy. With Flesh and Blood, we have a niche market in a niche market, inside of a niche market compared to what other things are selling around the world. And you have to acknowledge that. And even when you get into the higher, more expensive, you start getting into those $1,000, $2,000 cards, the people that can afford to buy that from you continues to shrink as well, right? So now you're even playing in a tighter field. So you do have to think about all those things if you're somebody that is doing this for just financial reasons, right? If you're just looking at this as like a way to flip in 2 years or some sort of asset investment idea, which I really don't buy into that fully. I can understand people doing it and thinking that way. But like you're mentioning and alluding to a lot is that there really is no value if I'm holding on to it for 5 years and the game dies and
Mm-hmm.
nobody's playing it anymore. Then all the opportunity costs that happened during that entire time of holding on to that investment for $200 tunic, I could have put that $200 into anything else.
Mm-hmm.
However, what do we get out of it, right? Like what are we getting out of it is one, we have something that I don't know about most people, but I really do appreciate the artwork and I do like looking at the cards, and they do bring me joy to hold and look and share with other people. So I get that. I get to use it. Funny enough, I don't even play my tunics. Like I don't even use them because I just don't care enough to use them. I play like Rhinar and Kassai and Bravo, and yeah, there's a world where I can put a tunic on Bravo, depending on the matchup. But I'm normally running a tectonic plating, which I think you can probably get for $20.
It's 40 right now. Yeah, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, so it's what do I get from it? Well, right now it's just literally sitting, on a shelf in a slab, just sitting there. But everything I do in my life costs money. Like if I order myself dinner tonight on Grubhub, right? It's gonna cost me $30, and it will be over and done with and forgotten in my life about as soon as I've consumed it and thrown it in the trash, right? And so for everything I do in my life, it's probably my wife probably hates it and my daughter probably hates it, but I always do like a financial calculation of how much is going to cost per X number of time of enjoyment. And if I go to the movies for 2.5 hours and it's going to cost me $80 for the family to go, or
Mm-hmm.
$35 an hour or something. You know, like I break it down like that. So for me to buy, this is kind of how I convince myself to buy the tunics and stuff, you know, and to buy the CNCs. If I do want to actually go to events and have a real chance of winning, let's say a calling or something, then I really do need to have the CNCs and the Art of Wars, and I need to have, you know, all those cards that could be put in and out of a sideboard to make a good deck. And so I looked at it and said, okay, I'm going to be playing this game probably 3 to 6 hours a week for the next 3 to 5 years. The cost per hour spent is so low at that point that unless I go crazy and I just start buying stuff for no reason constantly, it's really within a budget of entertainment expense, you could say. And I just, you know, rent to own, sure. The difference is you own it.
Right.
You know, you own it whether you use it or not. You still own the thing, so you're not continuing to pay it out. But the value is there when you sell it, and who you can market it to, and how good of a deal you can get, because everybody right now is paying basically 20% off of TCG Player Low in private channels, most likely. So you can just take that TCG Player Low and dump another 15-20%, you know, and then you don't have the piece anymore. So you got to find something to replace it, or you're quitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's just a weird balance. I try to walk the line in between of the whole player, collector, investor world, and try to understand everybody's motivations and ideology around it. But at the end of the day, this is a game. This is a game, you know, printed on cardboard. It's not the safest of asset. So I would discourage anybody from this being their primary investment, or even their probably fourth or fifth investment in their life. I think there's a lot of other places I would advise people to channel their money into before collecting and investing in cardboard. But I'm never to tell somebody that if you love it and you really want to do it, hey, by God, live your life and you know, don't let anybody else hold you back.
Yeah, I mean the counter to that, right, is that a lot of people out there making a lot of money. So fair enough, yeah. and more power to them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you blazed headlong right into my next one, right, which was the entertainment value and how we consider and factor that in, right? I mean, if you buy a $70 tunic, it's not a lot of games to, would you say 3-4 hours a week is what you're spending on the game. It's in CC, that's 3 to 4 games a week, maybe 5 or 6, depending on how you're cranking them. So that's, that's not too many weeks to get the payback period on that, just from versus going out to the bar or whatever. So
yeah, for sure. That's a great example too. I mean, imagine how much money you waste. I don't drink alcohol really anymore, so maybe once every 2 months.
Booster pack right here, baby.
Yeah, but you're drinking at home. There's a difference between at home and at bar. But going to a bar, I mean, imagine that you go spend $100 on drinks at a bar and you don't even remember that, like, part of the night, and you sleep through the next day. Like, what value did you really get out of that? I guess the social experience, like, which you could have done without the alcohol. It's just like it's a really interesting concept, because again, the price points are high. So as a single purchase in one step, it is daunting. Because I was there, and I can afford the card, and I was still there where I was like, I can't wrap my head around the idea of paying for this card. And I think I bought my Rainbow. I technically bought my Rainbow Foil tunic with a case of Welcome to Rathe, so that's how I got it. But I opened it. But still, it's the same thing. It's just like it is daunting, and especially if you're putting yourself like we're older, right? Let's put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who's 18 to 20, in college or whatever, not in college, but probably working one of their first jobs or first careers in their life. They probably don't have a crazy high income, and they're just getting acquainted with bills and like kind of living on their own and all that kind of stuff. And you just want to play the game for fun, right? You don't want to have to struggle to choose which bill you're not going to pay this month because you want to pick up a tunic. And I can sympathize with that. And I don't ever put any of this stuff on your credit card. But it's just, I can see the problem there. But also, it goes back to the point that we made like 20 minutes ago is, I mean, who at an armory hasn't let somebody proxy a card? Who at an armory hasn't let somebody borrow a card? The only time you really need these pieces is when you're going to like a higher level event, in which point I would argue you should have spent a lot more time already learning and playing the game before you even got to this point. So you could have at that point budgeted out like, hey, maybe I take 30 or 25 bucks a month and I put it into a savings account, and then over 5-6 months of playing the game, if I still enjoy it and I still love it and I want to get better at it, then maybe I take that, $150 and I go and I buy the CNCs and the tunic or something, and that's how I would do it. But
yeah, and then, I mean, you obviously have the argument there of the price of entry to most of these large tournaments are, what, $50 at best, right? And then if you're traveling...
the cheapest, yeah.
So, and I'm not talking armories rate, obviously, but we're talking the large events. So, yeah, I mean, I think that in some degree is a self-serving issue. But again, I absolutely commiserate with being a 22-year-old male, like, student out there in the world and having, not a lot of money. So I totally get it.
Yeah. We've all been there, all of us. Everybody who's ever talked has been there, I think, at some point.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I wasn't able to afford playing these games when I was in college, and a lot of these college kids seem to have a lot of money. So more power to them.
Well, I think I know what you mean, but I look at some of these guys, I'm like, how are you traveling to all these events and playing all these tournaments and having all these cards? But because when I didn't play TCGs it was a sidebar, I guess, but I didn't play TCGs from basically probably 17 years old to 36 years old. The only thing I did in between that was focus on career, investing, saving, and then eventually at some point my family. And then it wasn't until well after I got to the point where everything else in my life was pretty much taken care of on autopilot, and I was very happy with where I was, that I said, hey, maybe I can fling $1,000 a month into this game and have fun with it or something, rather than not. So I'm with you. I don't know, but hey, I like different things. Like I played video games. Well, what do I have to do there? I had to pay like $50-$60, and I can play that game for 8 months to a year or longer, depending on which one it was. So, I kind of chose the thing that I could enjoy that didn't cost me a lot of money, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm also frugal. Maybe we need to take tunics and put them inside of like those old gray SNES cartridges, and then maybe people will be more happy about it.
I'd be all about that. Yeah, I'd be doing that. Maybe we need more mystery packs and in Flesh and Blood, grab bags and surprise packs. Go more gambling on that.
Yeah, booster packs have been rough for me lately, so I'm a no on that one. But
well, that's actually something that's even a bigger point. We talk about the cost of tunics, but I have a question for you. It's like, how much money would you say like the average player spends on opening booster boxes or cases, as opposed to just buying the singles that they want?
What do you think the gap is there?
Yeah, like
we can figure. I think the average player, and I know people are going to throw stuff at the screen at this, right? But I think the average player, or I should say the mean, here we go. The mean is probably a case, right? I would say say the mean player, right? Yeah, per player is probably a case, right? So if you say that you can get a best case scenario case for like what, 340, 300, maybe even best case.
I think we should go with map, which is like 350, right? I mean, most people don't own an LGS and they aren't buying from distros. So like if you're buying map pricing from LSS's rules, right? You're paying whatever it is, 360 plus tax, right?
Okay, so yeah, so 350, right? Make the math easy, right? What do you need out of? Yeah. I mean, the example I used in my last one was Starstruck, right? So if you're a Bravo only player and the only thing you care about coming out of Dusk Till Dawn was Starstruck, it costs you $50. So the gap there is roughly $300, right? That you could potentially save by not cracking your case. Now, there's obviously not non-truths in that you get a whole bunch of other stuff. I completely acknowledge that, right? But if your main goal is to go get Starstruck, yeah, you're wasting $300, right? Or maybe not wasting $300, but your opportunity cost there is higher. How's that? Or lower, sorry.
Yeah, and we all love opening packs, right? You all love the thrill of getting something cool, seeing something for the first time, building your play sets or your master set. I mean, I have a binder like right behind me that I'm building for Bright Lights, right? I still don't have all the Majestics and stuff, but, I didn't want to just go buy them all. I wanted to open some of them, which is not the right move. Not the smart financial move, but it's more fun to open. So that's one of those questions is like maybe you sacrifice, especially with like Bright Lights is a great example. Like if I know I don't play mech, then, and Dusk Till Dawn was another good example. If I don't play Light or Shadow, or one of those 4 classes, then I've got an opportunity there to not purchase sealed product and to maybe put more of my money into my singles that I want to sure up on my actual decks that I do play.
Hmm.
And I think LSS, maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like they're designing it in that way to where you don't have to be like Magic the Gathering, where you have to buy every single set that comes out every 2 months to keep up with the game. And this one you can keep up by just going to your armory and doing a draft or a limited event. You get to open the packs, you get to have fun, play the game with your crew, but then you can also save your money and buy exactly what you want from whatever set you want.
Yeah, so I know I'm going to go way off script with this, but I'm actually kind of want to keep building on this. So something I've been wondering in Flesh and Blood for a long time is right now, it looks to me like it doesn't, like if you are a single seller, right? So you're a, what's the MM company up at Min-Max Games?
Min-Max,
right?
yeah. I talked to many of these guys, yeah.
Yeah, so say you're a Min-Max, right? You're going to spend, what would you, so it's probably like, what, you can get a booster box for like 50 or so from a distributor, right? So $200, let's say, cost them for a case. It's probably a little more than that plus. But then you got to have somebody to open it. Then you got to do shipping and all this stuff, right? And it costs you time. What's the actual like EV that is needed per box or per case for them to actually make it worth their time? I don't know what that number is, and if you do, I'd be very curious to know in a second here. But kind of the question where I'm going at here is, it seems to me like the EV is below where it should be for singlers to make a profit. But maybe that's not true. And I think that's being driven by the fact that normal people are opening boxes instead of counting on the singles market. That's my theory. But if you said you talked to these folks, I'm curious.
I talked to quite a few of them, and to be quite blunt, it's not that great right now. They kind of had a lot of struggles with Dusk Till Dawn. The kind of the word on the street is basically if they don't sell a ton of stuff week 1, which goes into another problem, because like if there's other LGSs who are getting early access to open the product and to get packs opened on streams or whatever, get them listed on their sites early and kind of promote them to people early, people are going to typically buy from those places. And so they're already behind the 8 ball by like a day or two, because they can't theoretically open their stuff sold and listed until release day. You can watch. I watched Bright Light's prices plummet every single day. And I told people in my Discord, I was like, just don't buy any singles for at least 3-4 weeks.
Sure.
Just don't buy anything, because it's going to all change. The only thing that didn't is Already Dead and Tome of Imperial Flame. So, I mean, those are like the only 2 cards that I think really, really, really stuck out as like the power cards of this set, unless you play Mech. And it's like that obvious for everybody. I think everybody. I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily think that it's all the players are opening their own product and therefore they don't need to buy from the singles market. I think everybody's attuned to the game that you should not be the first person buying on TCG Player, because you're going to probably lose 50, 60, 70% of whatever you put into it instantly within a week or two. And the single sellers are struggling. Stores are closing. Online stores are closing. Stores are stopping their buy list. Stores are no longer carrying singles. This is a true fact. Now, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but there is a negative consequence to when prices of singles are too low and legendaries and chase cards are too low. Businesses have to have a profit to stay in business. All those things you talk about, sorting and shipping and opening, and that's labor. That's somebody's trying to feed their families, or somebody's trying to get through college or whatever. Like, these people need income as well, and the only way they can do that is if they can at the very least break even, if not probably turn some profit, right? And that is a big fear of when things get so cheap. But it's also not completely like LSS's fault. I mean, the economy is tough. There is less money being put into the Flesh and Blood market and the TCG market in general right now. Money is flowing elsewhere or not flowing at all. And that's going to also put stagnation in the quantity sold. So that means that the supply is going to remain high and the demand is stagnant. And when that happens, there's only so many online single store sellers that are going to actually be able to sell the cards for the higher price before at some point, the undercutting happens, and, the people that have the copy, the first adopters who really wanted those legendaries first and they were willing to pay whatever prices they didn't care and they got it. Like, there's only so many of those people that exist in our space. And if you can see this directly on TCG Player. You know, you can see the number of sales per day of what cards, and you can see what the prices they went for. And then you can see the quantity available for sale. And you can see that number rising rapidly, and then the price going down as they're getting undercut by $1 here or 50 cents here. And I follow these very, very closely. And the last 2 sets have been significantly rapidly, you know, like the prices have fallen significantly faster of the last 2 sets than like the previous 3 2.0 sets by far, by weeks. And it's shocking. And I'm talking about the Marvels, you know, the legendaries, the cold foil legendaries, the EA cold foil legendaries. If you don't remember, what was it? Trench of the Sunken Treasure and Extended Art Redback Shroud, the 2 extended art variants of those, they were $250, $200 for, you know, all the way to $175 or so for like a month or 2. You're seeing the EA of Bright Lights, the extended art legendaries of Bright Lights, they're already below $80. That's a massive, just significant drop. And as much as we all love lower priced, accessible cards to build our decks with, there is another side of this that, you know, could be daunting if stores do close and stores aren't able to turn a profit, which means that they're not going to go and they're not going to spend $30,000 a set, you know, buying 1,000 boxes so that they can open them all and put the singles out there. They're just going to stop buying as much because they don't want to get hosed for that much money and have that much money on the sidelines parked that they can't sell. And that is a reality of the business. So
right.
There's a balance. There's a balance.
No, and that makes sense. And I think when I was kind of proposing my scheme, I think I failed to deliver kind of where I was going, was that when I'm talking about people opening it, it's not about that they have it. It's that they open it and they want something specific, and then they sell the other stuff they don't need, right? Which
okay.
So that was that side of it. And then to kind of your point about these stores closing, that's again where I was going with the question of, you know, if the EV gets too low, they're just not going to do it. But isn't that, at least in the long term, isn't that a self-correcting problem, because then then supply drops?
Yeah, but also, I mean, LSS is in the business of selling booster boxes, right? And that does, you know, if the end consumer buys less, and then the LGS buys less, and then the distro buys less, well, LSS is selling less, right? And I'm not trying to paint this negative dark cloud, but that is a reality of the business that we're in, and it's your first point where you made about people listing things for TCG Player, that also kind of implies that there's a lot of undesirable things that people don't want. And if nobody desires them, it doesn't matter if you list them, nobody's buying them, right? So that is another problem, is that you in an idealistic world, you would be able to trade the things that you don't want for things that you do want. However, in a super specified set like Mechanologist, I hate to tell you this, but like 90% of people just don't want all the cards. Like because maybe they don't. How many Mechanologists are at events? You know what I mean? You get my point? Like, it's like there's not that many dashes, you know, and maxes and tech levasins at the events. So most people are therefore listing cards and trying to offload their cards of Bright Lights as fast as possible to get whatever value they can so they can put it into something they want. But like you said,
but then why even open it? I mean, I guess that's kind of where I was going with the whole thing. Right?
Yeah,
like, why even open it? Right.
That's the point. Yeah. Why open it?
Yeah. Just go with your.
But we need people to open it. We do need people to open it, right? Otherwise, the singles won't be cheap or low priced.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
in a perfect microeconomic world, and maybe my model's wrong here, right? But in a perfect microeconomic world, if let's say all the players stop opening and they just do singles, there's still X demand for X single, right? So somebody has to open the cases to get that supplied, and then it should somehow come out to cross on the curves, right? I mean, you know, I did Econ 101, look at me.
Yeah.
Right? So the curves cross, and then everybody should be in theory happy. Now, I get that that's not the way it works, and we're also playing in a game where, and I do think this is a big part of it, to your point about the mech set, right? Not everybody plays every class. Most people, I would have to say the vast majority of non-competitive players have a class or 2 or 3 that they play.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
So, you know, your competitive players are they may be buying more stuff in turnover, but they're not driving the singles purchases, right? The masses are. So
Yeah, what used to hold up the sets, I believe, was probably mostly the legendaries, because the legendaries used to kind of always be around $100. They are 80% lower than they used to be, right? That's a massive decline from 100 to 20.
but that's
If you
what
look
we've
right
asked them to do. That's what we've asked
yes.
them to do. Yeah. So
So let me ask you a theoretical. If you ran a business and you would always buy 2,000 boxes of Flesh and Blood, and you historically made a profit on that, so you're okay with that price mount. If 2 sets in a row you lost significant thousands of dollars that was just tied up in sealed product that didn't sell or singles that didn't sell, would you continue to purchase 1,000 boxes?
I would actually probably purchase 0 boxes, because the reason that I purchased 1,000 was based on the time value, or the value of my time as well, right? So am I going to purchase 2,000 boxes and then still put the time into that? Maybe. But there was probably a reason that I chose 1,000 as being the right number. I don't know. I mean, maybe not. You'd have to sit down and do the math on that, right? But
I mean,
margin is great and all, but margin is not great if I make 100% margin on a $2 card, that's not worth my time, right?
Yep. So, and I think that's what a lot of LGSs, there are some like polls and stuff going around to LGSs and things. People are trying to kind of formulate some of this data, at least in the United States. I can't speak for other countries. I'm sure Japan, there's markets that we have that are definitely on the up and growing, but there are markets like in the UK and stuff where they are struggling. Spain is struggling. I've talked to people on my channel from all over the world about Flesh and Blood and their regions and stuff. And there are some regions that are struggling that need a little bit more of a boost and support, whether it's from distribution or pricing or just availability. But overall, the game is. I would kind of swing back to a positive here. Overall, though, the game is great, right? I think the game is mechanically probably more, even with Lexi and Dromai being strong. I think it's probably more balanced than ever. I still see lots of different heroes in top 8s. I see different heroes winning events. So I think that there's probably more balance than there's been since I've been a part of the game. The game is definitely growing. You see the growth. You see the Reddit's growing, and the Discord's growing, and the player gym score is growing, and the events are selling out. So there's a lot of fantastic things going. But I think something does need to be figured out with 2.0 and kind of maybe some of the cards need to be a little bit rare so the price comes up a little bit. I don't have a perfect solution. I don't know all the financials of everybody. If I did, I could come up with a solution, but I don't have that information. So I kind of just have to theorize it.
Yeah, fair enough. We can sit here and spitball all day long, but in the end, we're just 2 dudes, right? So
yep, just 2 guys talking about the game.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, with that, let's put a pin in this. So thanks a lot for coming on and spending your time. This is actually I kind of enjoyed this. Not kind of, I actually really enjoyed this. So do you have anything you wanted to bring up or discuss, or any opens before we get out of here?
No, I think that there's tons of way for people to enjoy this game. They've done a really fantastic job, from high quality art to high quality gameplay to high quality events, high quality leadership. I'm thrilled to be even just a part of this community. So just thank you. Appreciate people like you to give me a chance to speak about things. I'm very passionate and very animated. I tried to tone it down actually for you. I tried to tone it down a little bit.
This is the boring channel, Josh. This is the boring.
No, I just try to try not to go crazy. But yeah, I really do just enjoy talking about the game, and I'm so excited for what's to come, because they keep changing the model, every 6 months it seems like, and I never know what's around the corner. And it's like heavy hitters. I play Guardian, Brute, and Warrior.
Yep.
Like
it looks good.
I have a feeling I'm getting something from this, Yeah, so that's all I got to say. Is just I think we're a really great spot. Everybody can enjoy the game the way they want to enjoy it. Collector, investor, player, flipper, whatever, store. And I respect everybody's way that they play it, but I definitely have an opinion about them all,
Yeah, fair enough. No, this has been awesome. All right, well, again, I want to thank you for being on. One more time, can you let people know where they can find you, and yeah, basically that.
Yeah, if you want to hang out with us, we call the Cardboard Warrior community over here on RiddlermanGaming on YouTube. That's the primary spot, and then we have a Discord channel where we all kind of hang out after the live streams and videos and stuff. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, go check them out. So Anyway, I really enjoyed this, and hopefully you all did as well. Please leave us comments below. I know we'll both be perusing the comments, and we'll be chatting with you. So let us know, and give us those likes and subs, and go check out Riddlerman Gaming. So anyway, my friend, thanks again, and say it with me. Go Commando.
Go Commando.